Currently, we have reached planetary saturation levels for PFAS, which means that when you look up at that cloud and it rains unsafe levels of at least 4 PFAS species.
It turns out that our entire water cycle is contaminated with PFAS. So even when it rains on the Tibetan plateau, that rain contains PFAS. To check the water levels in your area, you can use these maps that show PFAS contamination across the US, Europe, and Australia. What about Los Angeles? Encino. That's where I spent like 7 of the last 10 years.
Crescenta Valley.
Those are all high.
Yeah. Santa Clarita, some PFH excess level is crazy. So maybe you're getting your water from Santa Clarita.
Wow.
There's a calculator. It could give you what an estimate in your blood serum is. What we can try to do now is put that up in the calculator, see if you get something close to what you have if you want.
Sure.
PFH excess. So a typical value for an adult is 1 part per billion, and then the Santa Clarita water is around 37 parts per trillion.
If you look after like 10 years?
So after roughly 10 years of exposure, you would have 6.85 parts per billion in your blood. And then I can tell you that you are at 684.
That would explain things. Now, I can't say for sure where my drinking water was coming from, but if I was consistently drinking water contaminated at similar levels, then that would explain my results. But if you're worried about your own water, you should contact your provider directly for the most relevant information. It's concerning just how unregulated drinking water has been. It was actually only a year ago, in April 2024, that the US EPA finally set legal limits for PFAS in drinking water. The safe level for PFOA went down from DuPont's initial 1 part per billion to 4 parts per trillion.
So we're no longer talking about 1 drop of PFOA in 20 of these tanks. We're talking about 1 drop in 5,000. That's 5 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And if there's even a drop of PFOA in there, the EPA is concerned.
The same 4 parts per trillion limit was also set for PFOS, the sister chemical. And Gen X went down from the 70,000 parts per trillion initially proposed by Chemours to just 10. The same goes for PFH excess. For reference, the EPA's limit for lead in water is 10,000 parts per trillion, and for cyanide, 200,000.
It gives you a pretty clear indication of how concerned the scientific community is.
And just when we got EPA limits, we got a new administration in the US which might be reversing some of the PFAS bans. So you can't always depend on the regulators, and you seemingly can't depend on the companies that make this stuff to dispose of it safely. So what can you do? If your water is contaminated, you might want to consider getting a PFAS certified filter. Reverse osmosis, granulated active carbon, and ion exchange filters are all capable of removing PFAS out of drinking water. But the responsibility to filter drinking water shouldn't come down to the individual. PFAS should be captured at the source during manufacturing, before they ever reach the environment. And some companies, like Pure Affinity, are developing custom filters to make that happen.
So very lab-looking lab.
Exactly, yeah. So could you walk me through like what all these pipes do and what do you have in here?
So this water is representative of where you've had a big firefighting foam incident. Right. So you want to filter this water, but basically the concept is take it from the top through the vessel. As it passes through this material, it basically sticks on to some of the PFAS chemicals in water, and then you run into another part of treatment,
right,
and a third one.
To me, it seems like if PFAS are so like bioaccumulative and actually persistent and stable, they don't really react with things. So how do you force them to react with stuff in here?
Basically taking advantage of this long organic tail as well as the polar head. And so you can have some electrostatic interactions with the polar head, and then you can have some hydrophilic and hydrophobic interactions with the tail. And by combining these 3 binding mechanisms, you increase massively your likelihood of binding PFAS, even if it's still difficult.
Right. Do the levels drop 100% already here, or do you see a gradual decrease in PFAS?
That's the cool question.
Okay.
So in the beginning, it drops 100% after this one.
Oh, so problem solved, or?
Problem solved for the time being.
Okay.
What we see right now is it will last about 40,000 volumes of this vessel. So a 10-liter vessel would basically provide all of the PFAS treatment for a household.
In a year?
For a year.
You want this to be in factories first, so it never
Yeah.
gets into the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking to the fluorochemicals manufacturers, and they're really trying to move forward rather than just wait for regulations.